Hi everyone, my name is Michelle and I'm currently a senior at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and my major is Child, Youth, and Family Studies with a minor in Education. In today's video, I'm going to really talk about oppression, and more specifically, I'm going to talk about ableism as an oppression. Ableism is a social pattern in which people who are disabled are treated differently to an unnecessary degree than those who are not different. This could take form in either not accommodating those with physical or mental disabilities or treating them as if they're unable to live without assistance. That is kind of the definition that everyone in society sees ableism as, and ableism is a form of oppression. I'm interested in talking about ableism because I plan in the future to really work with people who have disabilities, and I've always enjoyed advocating for them. And this is a population that really doesn't get a ton of advocation and recognition for the fact that they face so much oppression. I kind of just want to start off by defining what a disability is in America. And it is a federal law that defines people with a disability as any person who has a physical or mental impairment that sustainably limits one or more major life activities, has a record of such impairment, or is regarded as having such an impairment. In general, a physical or mental impairment includes hearing, mobility, visual impairment, chronic alcoholism, chronic mental illness, AIDS, related complex and mental retardation that substantially limits one or more life functions. A physical disability can include walking, talking, hearing, seeing, breathing, and so on. And even one caring for themselves is considered a disability. So how do we know what oppression is, and how do we know that ableism is an oppression, and how do we know that people who are disabled are getting oppressed? In my opinion, there are four main ways people with disabilities are getting oppressed. First is their education they're being oppressed in. Second is their jobs. Third is their income. And fourth is their living situation. The first way I'd like to talk about is education, obviously. So people who have disabilities are really just don't have the same opportunities to have the same education as we do, as people who aren't disabled. First off, the oppression really starts from a very early age. Starting in kindergarten, individuals who have disabilities are most often moved on to a separate classroom by themselves with other disabled children. So they're not, even from the start, they're not given a fair shot at education or being allowed to be in the normal classroom, as people like to call it. And then it even kind of continues as they hit college. There are not, as I know, there's not a single college that is really actually set up to help people with disabilities. Yes, they have like the University of Nebraska, the DLC office, but in all reality, the way the classes are set up for people with mental disabilities, it's definitely really not an option for them to come to college. The second way that people with disabilities are oppressed is their jobs. Millions of disabled people, even though there's laws against it, don't get jobs just because they're disabled. That could be because they're mentally disabled or physically disabled, but they don't get jobs really in all reality, or they don't get paid what they should be paying. There is a huge gap in between what someone with a disability gets paid and what someone who doesn't have a disability gets paid, so that really affects their income level, and their income level directly affects their living circumstances. They can't make an income, and after the age of 21, they're technically graduated from high school. Some of these disabled people are on their own. How are they supposed to support themselves when they can't make any money? They really can't get any jobs that can support themselves, and they can't live a sustainable life. You may ask yourself, who are the people that are oppressing these disabled members of our society? And in my opinion, everyone does it. Anyone that is not really educated in how much a disabled person can truly accomplish on their own are the people that are oppressing this ableism onto people who have disabilities. And I even kind of see it in a matter of people joking about people who have disabilities. Like, you may not really mean what you're saying, but just by joking about them, you are oppressing them. And people can oppress disabled people in many ways. They can do it physically, mentally, and socially. Um, and I just like to think that with how in the past we used to call people with disabilities retarded, that we are moving in the right direction from not calling that now it's disabled, but we still have a lot of work we can do in stopping the oppression that's happening for disabled people. I really don't understand why people oppress disabled people. It's hurtful. I can get how it can happen sometimes, and the fact that if you're uneducated on disabilities and what they have, you can just assume that they can't read or they can't write or they can't carry on a job. I think that there's a lot of assumptions that go on about disabled people, and that is why we oppress them. I kind of personally have had experience with a disability that has oppressed me. I grew up in the special education room for a mental disability my entire life, and I just think back to the oppression that I faced as a child growing up, and in return, long term, it gave me a lot of insecurities about myself, and insecurities like the fact that I didn't think I was smart enough or good enough compared to all the other children growing up that were in the normal classroom. I was always, even my friends would be, you're in the special ed classroom. So I can personally relate to this ableism personally in life and just see how it affected me. And I don't think that my friends were ever trying to be mean, but it's just how our society views people who are disabled. We just view them as lower. And like another question I wanted to hit on is, why does this oppression keep happening? And I honestly think it's because, like I said before, it's considered kind of a joke that no one really means it, but we say it anyways. And I also think it's because there isn't enough awareness out there to be able to educate people that disabled people are very capable of doing things on their own. And I think sometimes people justify their act of oppressing people who are disabled by just saying they don't understand. They don't know I'm talking about them. Well, in all reality, if we all keep having these thoughts and ideas, we may not be saying them, they may not be understanding them, but if we keep having them, the oppression will continue to happen. What measures could someone take to reduce their capability of oppressing someone with a disability? Is one, get educated on them. Understand the disability. Get to know them personally. I think once you know someone personally, you really can't oppress them as much because you realize how much they are capable of doing. I think our language and society is a huge way we can stop oppressing people that have disabilities. We shouldn't be using words like retarded, even though people still use them these days. That's a huge thing. Social media is huge on making fun of people with disabilities, and I think we personally as individuals can catch ourselves to stop this oppression by just thinking about things before we say them and thinking about things before we post them. I think that if this stuff doesn't start to happen, we don't start to take steps in the right direction to make this phenomenon of oppressing people with disabilities, we're never going to be able to help disabled people get to their full potential. And that's super saddening in my opinion. This is a liability for our economy as like a whole. I think once we start challenging disabled people and realizing that they are capable of so much, that society will benefit from it greatly. In all reality, I personally work with an individual who has a physical disability, and when she comes into work, she is such a hard worker and works harder than some of the people I know that have no physical or mental disabilities. So we as a society really need to start exposing ourselves, learning the history that comes behind the struggles that people with disabilities have taken. I do think that our society is moving in the right direction, but we still, like I said before, have a lot of work to do. And it starts with individual people deciding that they're going to make that change and stop oppressing people with disabilities themselves. And then that's going to have a butterfly effect with like the entire country and eventually hopefully the entire world. And then my hopes for people with disabilities is someday that they can get the same education that people without disabilities can have, even all the way up if they want to go to college. People with mental, like severe mental disabilities, will have some sort of trade that they can do to go to college. I also hope that someday a lot of people with disabilities are living in homes because they don't have the financial status to be on their own. I really think if we, the United States, or we as people created more jobs for people with disabilities, they could financially support themselves. I really appreciate you listening to my post, and I'm going to link my sources below. And if you have any other questions, please comment or post. I would love to answer them. And thank you for listening, and have a great night.